Hello, people! Thanks for joining me. I'm Scotty D, and this Les Paul Supreme has seen better days. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Doesn't look too bad so far, right? No big deal. Just hold on a minute. There it is. It's really a shame that someone tried to repair a broken headstock with this stuff. I think this Les Paul Supreme deserves a lot better than this. And this is the worst case scenario for a break. They didn't even put any glue in it, in the joint. They just put this JB weld over the outside, thinking that would do everything it needed to do, of course, until you put string tension on it, and then you get this. So, what I think I'm going to do is get some epoxy in there and clamp it up and then start removing this stuff, because I don't want any of the debris getting down in that crack before I glue it up. The crack looks pretty clean from here. I held it in the vise like this to get the tuners and the truss rod cover off and everything. It's so flimsy that gravity wants to just take it. The only thing really holding it all together is this headstock veneer. Let's look inside this truss rod area. Pretty scary looking. Looks like there's some blue stuff. I don't know what the blue stuff is. Is it tape? Oh, maybe maybe they did stick something down in there that was blue. I can't quite determine yet. I'm gonna glue it up with the G-Flex epoxy. This is the West Systems 655. It's thickened. It has some stuff in there that makes it extra thick and extra strong. And I've had such good luck with it. I'm gonna do equal parts. There we go. And I'm gonna mix in some color. I've got two things here that I want to use. I've got this cherry red, which will give me kind of a heritage cherry kind of look. I've also got a Bordeaux, which will add a little bit of blue. Just so that if there's a seam or anything showing, it'll be a similar color to the stain that they used at the factory. It kind of looks like candy. I'll put this paste wax in and around the truss rod and the wood here in this truss rod cavity, so that when the epoxy squeezes into this area, I can chip it out easily after it cures. Get a little. You know what might be better too is a guitar string. Guitar strings are thin enough to really slide this deep inside. This toothpick's just a little too thick. Kind of pumps it. Yeah, it squeezed out, seriously. into the truss rod area. And I put wax on the surface of this, but I don't think there's going to be any squeezing out. Well, I'll leave it here like this. There's enough gravity from all these clamps. Hopefully it's just pushing it down. Just enough to hold it till I get some splines in it. Anyhow. I'm going to start scraping this stuff off. Not before I tried to use some epoxy removing gel, acid stuff. It didn't work. If I had to guess, I'd say they used Harbor Freight epoxy, like a 2-part 5-minute epoxy, or a JB Weld. Either way, it's the very worst possible thing you could ever try to put on a lacquer guitar to repair it, because I mean I had to really damage the existing finish that was under it all by scraping it and filing it away. I was hoping to preserve more, but it was too bad. Now we can see there was a couple of dowels drilled through at a weird angle. It didn't help. Didn't keep it from breaking. This is my homemade jig for running carbon fiber splines. I cut the channels with a Bosch Colt router and an 1/8" fluted bit. It's a downcut bit and it's about 2.5 inches long. The jig itself is about 8.5 inches long, and it works pretty good. I get half the depth and then I remove this 1/4 inch piece and get to my final depth on the second pass. After I do the treble side of the back of the neck, I'll flip the jig or slide it over and do the bass side. Try to leave about 5/8 of an inch down the center so that I don't accidentally hit the truss rod. And this work I do in the garage because it leaves a bit of sawdust. So I moved the guitar on over here to this other bench, and here are the splines. I get these from Stuart McDonald. They're 1/8 inch by 3/8. And, you know, I've done the other route where you cut all the wood away from here to here, and you wrap it with the carbon fiber fabric. And I've also done those long splines of wood. They're 1/4 inch by, God, they're almost 10 inches long from the String Tech workstations way. I bought the whole setup. It was like $800. And I like this better. I'm going to cut these to about 3 inches. There's only a 3 inch by 1/8 inch strip to touch up. Make it try to look like wood again. And it's quick and it's easy, and this is just the way I love to do it now. So let's go over to the bandsaw and cut these babies short. So what I do is I kind of finesse those ends on that disc sander there until I get it right. And the reason I went so close to the truss rod is because there's this area here that is really skinny, and it's just not going to be full depth right here on this one spot. It's a little deeper than it needs to be on either end, but right here there's this area where it's just barely touching the surface. I might end up just kissing the corner of this when I sand it smooth. So having these remain at their full height is key for it to be super strong. And the shorter you go with them, the more chances are that they're going to be below the surface right here. But since I went a little longer at 3 inches, mine are protruding slightly right here. No big deal, but just something to keep in mind if you ever try this. So why do I use the peanut butter colored G-Flex epoxy on this job? Well, I didn't mean to make it look like peanut butter. I'm just trying to make it look like natural mahogany. I use those blend all powders, the mix all pigment and the red mahogany tint. Just trying to achieve the natural wood color for this first little thing. Next we'll get to the reds and whatnot, but first we glue it in place with the epoxy, inserting the carbon fiber rods. It doesn't really take that much because it's a pretty tight fit. The rods and the slots are a pretty good marriage. So there's a little bit of room for the epoxy, but not a ton. Push these down in there as far as they'll go, and we'll put that leftover on the top. We'll try to make sure that it's squeezing out proud of the surface all around. Probably takes 10 to 12 hours to cure. I'll come back and start working it the next day. First I use files, then I use sandpapers. Lots of fun. So after getting it all smoothed over here today, I decided to put the tuners back on and string it up. He wants 11 through 49 strings on it, and I thought I would string it up and give it a listen because these guys keep sending me guitars or bringing me guitars with no strings on them, and I don't know what tunings they use. I don't know what gauge strings. It's all a big surprise. I have to ask them later, and I don't get to hear the electronics. You know, in this case they sound good. Let's give it a listen, and then I'll take it all back apart and continue on with the finish repairs. But it looks like it's holding tune, and the epoxy repair was great with the carbon fiber, but we'll give it a quick listen. It works! And I can't play 11s, man. I started playing 8s. So 11s are killing me. Alright, it's still strung up. I'm getting ready to take the strings and the tuners back off and work on the rest of this finish repair. There's this crack that I can fix while I'm at it. There's this dowel. This dowel, I gouged out the surface and put in a donor piece of mahogany, which was too small. I'm going to redo that. But this is kind of my plan over here. I've got this other base that I'm working on at the same time, and it's kind of the same thing. We've got this horrible line of probably black epoxy or something that they used way back in the day. And let me show you what I did. Okay, I still have to run the splines for this one. I think I might do that today. But there's this test area that I worked on right here. And I want to explain what I used to do that. This area was just as bad and bare wood as our Les Paul Supreme is right here. So yeah, this area was bare wood just like that yesterday, and it had this ugly line. So what I do is I gouged out the line and I filled it in with epoxy putty. The epoxy putty, I work with the brown and white mix-all, and just a tiny bit, just a tiny drop of this mix-all red to get a good epoxy color that's similar to the natural mahogany. This mahogany is newer, so it's a lighter color than this. But after I do the sanding to the epoxy putty, I do a really just a very light coating of fill and finish, and then I start mixing the Wipe On Poly, which is the color tone, in a cup with a teeny tiny bit of the brown and red, and then a little bit of this Bordeaux, which is a bluish red. And then I just brushed it on with a small brush, a little bit bigger than this brush. And by golly, that is it. Next, I'm going to use a little technique called gouging or scooping. It's when you take a tool and you kind of puncture out or gouge out part of the surface of one piece of wood, and then you do the same exact thing from a donor piece of wood, and you bring it over to the piece that we're working on and glue it into place. Now, I don't know what kind of glue they used to use back in the olden times when they did this, but these days we use CA glue, super glue. The gel CA glue is the one that I was told to use by Ian Davlin. And so there it is in the little crater. Gel super glue. Just want to clean up around the edges with some naphtha, and then I'll slide the donor piece over. I've got a little arrow drawn onto it to show me which direction the runout is going. The arrow itself is just, pointing towards the headstock. That's just the way I do it. The runout is the direction of the grain of wood. And headstocks are tilted, so it's important to realize there's grain runout. It's the reason they break, actually, is because of the grain runout. So I hold it in place with this little piece of hockey puck and some wax paper to keep the puck from sticking to the gouge. And there it is. We'll accelerate with the glue dry accelerator, and then I'll put on a little bit of Glue Boost Ultra Thin. That'll kind of help lock in everything, and then we'll do a whole bunch of sanding. Make sure everything's really, really extra smooth before I start putting on this new color. That's the Boston Terrier taking a little nap over there. I don't know if you can hear that. It's kind of like having a pig in the house. All right, now I did a little bit of brushing with the old reddish colors in this cup. And I used this brush. Brushy, brushy, brushy. I'm going to wait a little while, then I'm going to wipe some poly over this, maybe 2 or 3 coats, and scuff it up with the 300 grit, and then I'll do some little grain dots. Then I'm going to take it out and spray it. And here's where we're at today after spraying the dark red mahogany toner from Mohawk. I get mine from the internet clean spores is where I get mine. So just to recall, what I did is I brushed in with the Wipe On Poly color tone mixed with reddish colors, and then I took the Pigma pen #1, and this is the light or the dark brown. They call it Sakura. I get this at Michael's Crafts. I put in the little grain dots, and after the grain dots, I hit it with a mist coat of this Ultra Flow Flat. Also for Mohawk, also I can get it at Cling Spores or on the Amazon maybe. So after a mist coat and I wait an hour, I do this little burst. You know, I just go ch. It's very fun. I did 2 coats of the dark red, and it camouflaged the splines, but of course if I zoom in, you should be able to see. My goal was to get it looking really good from 4 or 5 feet away, and as we get closer and closer, we start to see evidence of the repair. But it's perfectly acceptable for all of my customers, because it's pretty much a hell of a lot better than what they had to begin with. One more thing is I taped off all the white binding stuff. I taped it off with this pickup tape, and then I just peeled it off, and today I'll be able to go down and start doing more mist coats of this. Probably 2 mist coats and 1 heavy coat of gloss lacquer today. And then for the next 3 or 4 days I'll build up about 10 coats of nitro and let it set for 3 or 4 weeks probably. So now I'm going to do wet sanding. This is after 2 or 3 weeks. I kind of lost track. Been busy. But what I do, and I learned this first I saw it on YouTube. I may have read it in some of Dan Earlywine's books, and then I saw it in a Gibson TV video on YouTube. And that is that we only wet sand with 1 grit, 600 grits, wet sandpaper. See halfway up the neck where I had it masked off, and then you see all the orange peel and overspray? Well, we want to get that smooth, but we don't want to remove excessive amounts of the lacquer. If I went with 600 up through 5,000 grit and just continued in a linear path like that, I'd be removing a lot of lacquer. So what I do is 600 grit, get as much of the orange peel off as possible, take it back down to the spray window, and spray a really, really thin coat of lacquer. Wait another week and just take it to the buffer. Sometimes it doesn't work out, you have to do extra, but... Alright, now it's been a few weeks, and it's been a week since I put these 11s back on here. And what I'm starting to see here is that old crack and these things are telegraphing through the finish, because the string tension is really great. It's 11 through 50 strings. So I called up the customer and I told him I really think it's a bad idea to string this guitar up with 11s, and he was very understanding and a very smart guy. He uses 11s because he likes to play jazz, but he has other guitars. He has another Supreme actually that he just purchased, and he's going to what I'm going to do is, what we decided would be the best bet is to string this up with 9s and have him find a buyer who's happy playing 9s or 8s. And there's millions of guys out there that play light strings, ultra light strings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo this for you so you can hear the clean pickup sound. But I'm going to take everything back apart. I'm going to scuff this back up and put some poly finish on here, which is a little harder than the lacquer. And then after a few weeks I'll string it back up with the 9s, and I think this problem will probably be gone. You never know with these things. Let's give it a listen. I don't know if you remember, but some of these knobs got crushed in transit. I just got these bell-shaped knobs off of
eBay. Stuart McDonald was all out. They're the fine spline with a gold insert, and these are from the Guitar Parts Market in Japan. And they're a good fit, so these are not the easiest thing to find with the gold, but really good fit, and I'm very happy with this. This was just the icing on the cake. This one might be a little loose. Okay, this one's a little loose. I think what I can do is just drop a teeny bit of gel CA glue around the edge of one side maybe, and hit it with some accelerator to harden it, and that'll give it just enough to snug on. We'll give it a listen. I'll continue working on it, but you guys, don't worry. It shouldn't get much worse than this. It'll probably get a little better, and we'll talk to you soon.